Hello and welcome to Football Daily, where today we're looking at 10 of the deadliest firms in football. 10. FK Sarajevo. We start in Bosnia with FK Sarajevo ultras Horde Zla. Their name translates to Horde of Evil, and the group became notorious in the late 80s and early 90s, with their famous crimes including riots in Mostar and the stabbing of 2 partisan fans. In the 2000s, the group separated into 2 factions, the old versus the young, and matches were often overshadowed by fighting between them. But they reunited to battle supporters of Široki Brijeg, who were mostly Herzegovinian Croats, while most Sarajevo fans were Bosnian Muslims. In 2009, the rivalry came to a head. Horde Zla faced off against Škripari, a Široki fan club known for displaying the swastika. Police cars were set alight and shops were demolished, while one man was shot and killed, reportedly by the police. The copper accused of the murder was arrested, only to escape from custody just hours later. 9. Burnley. Premier League side Burnley's fans earned a reputation for thuggery in the 1980s, as the club dropped from the top flight down to the 4th division. Appropriately named the Suicide Squad, members have been filmed giving Nazi salutes, and in 2002, one supporter murdered a 17-year-old Nottingham Forest fan because he had mistakenly gone into a Burnley pub. The hooligan was given 7 years in custody and a 10-year ban from football, but a week after his release, he was caught at a Burnley game. That same year, Claret's ultras rioted in Blackburn, in what police described as like something out of Braveheart. The culprits were given a combined 32 years in prison, and dozens of bans were dished out, but for sheer inability to learn from the past, Burnley makes our list. 8. Chelsea. Famously racist with roots in organisations like the National Front, Chelsea's headhunters have hit the headlines regularly in the last few years. In 2010, 18 men were sent to prison for taking part in a fight with Cardiff City fans, in a scrap which left a policeman with a broken jaw. In 2015, Chelsea fans were filmed in Paris stopping a black man from getting on the metro. In 1985, one supporter, Kevin Whitton, was arrested after a horrifying attack on a pub landlord. Chelsea had lost at home, and the mob descended on the boozer, shouting, "War, war, war." They beat the American owner almost to death, and as they left, Whitton reportedly said, "Bloody Americans coming here, taking our jobs." He was sentenced to life imprisonment. He ended up serving just 3 years. 7 and 6. Celtic and Rangers. Glasgow clubs Rangers and Celtic started as friends, often finding themselves united against the police, and it's thought that the clubs themselves cultivated the image of a fierce rivalry to bring in the punters. It was good for business, as the clubs grew into the biggest in Scotland, but things took a turn for the worse when Irish politics became involved. Celtic came to be seen as the club of Catholics, while Rangers had an unspoken policy of only signing Protestant players, only broken by the arrival of Mo Johnston in 1989. Bottles and alcohol have been banned in the stadiums to prevent violence between the 2 sets of fans, but the derby still brings out the worst of Glasgow. In 2015, a minivan taking Rangers supporters to a match was stopped, and Celtic fans attacked the occupants, knocking out a 10-year-old's teeth and leaving one man in hospital with a broken jaw and suspected brain damage. One man had his lower lip bitten off, but his assailant was cleared of assault after claiming he acted in self-defense. Meanwhile, Celtic players in 2011 opened their mail in the morning to find bullets sent by Rangers ultras. The Light Blues were sent down to the 3rd Division in 2012 for financial irregularities, but returned to the Premiership in 2016, prompting a renewal of a hatred which has been 130 years in the making. 5. Millwall. South London club Millwall are better known for their hooligans these days than their football, with their principal gang known as the Bushwhackers, after the ambush forces of the American Civil War. In the 1960s, a deactivated grenade was lobbed at a rival keeper, while Millwall fans routinely threw coins at opponents, sometimes with the edges filed down until they were sharp. Thanks to fan violence, Millwall Stadium, the Den, has been closed 5 times by the FA, and the club even has a weapon named after it, the Millwall Brick, a rolled and folded newspaper dipped in liquid to make it harder and heavier. In 2001, Bushwhackers slashed the faces of 2 Wolverhampton Wanderers fans with Stanley knives, and a year after, 900 Millwall supporters ran riot after a loss to Birmingham, setting 2 cars alight and pelting police with paving stones and fireworks. 4. Feyenoord. Feyenoord's fan club, the Legion, is one of the Netherlands' most famous firms. The number 12 is never assigned to a player at the Rotterdam outfit, instead being reserved for the supporters. After clashes with Tottenham fans in the 1960s, Feyenoord began to develop a thug culture, and by the 1990s, the SCF hooligans had emerged, an organisation regarded as one of the continent's most violent. And in 1997, they fatefully squared off against Ajax's F-side gang, in what became known as the Battle of Beverwijk. The fight had been carefully arranged, with both sides meant to bring their 50 toughest members. But the SCF abandoned the rules, turning up with 300 combatants armed with knives, tasers and baseball bats. One Ajax fan, Carlo Picconi, was beaten to death with a hammer. 3. Delie. The Delie, meaning the heroes or the brave, are a Red Star Belgrade ultra group, actually made up of several smaller groups, and all devoted to Red Star's football and basketball teams. Though allied with fans of Olympiacos and Spartak Moscow, the Delie have been associated with Serb nationalism since the 1980s, a leaning which intensified as Yugoslavia became unstable. 1990 saw a 3,000-strong army take on Dinamo Zagreb fans in a pitched battle between Serb and Croat, and many of the Delie joined the Serb Volunteer Guard under the command of Arkan, a famous paramilitary leader who was later indicted by the UN for crimes against humanity. He was also the head of the Red Star Fan Association. Though Red Star won the European Cup in 1991, they have since fallen from the heights of European football, but the Delie remain a force to be reckoned with. 2. The Football War. In 1969, El Salvador and Honduras were on the verge of conflict. 20% of Honduras's rural population was made up of Salvadoran immigrants, and the country began to deport them, splitting up families and redistributing land to native Hondurans. Into this hostile atmosphere came a World Cup qualifier between the nations, which, unfortunately enough, used a best-of-3 format. The first two fixtures saw tensions escalate, with the Salvadoran players having dead rats thrown through their windows in Honduras, and the Honduran fans beaten in the second game in San Salvador. El Salvador won the third match, played in Mexico, but by now the hatred had boiled over, and 3 weeks later, war broke out. Both countries conducted air raids, and by the time a ceasefire was negotiated, more than 3,000 people had died, the majority of them civilians. It took another 11 years for a formal peace treaty to be signed. 1. Roma. Often overshadowed by city rivals Lazio, Roma fans have a long and sordid history of crime, and among the many ultras occupying the Curva Sud, there is one man who stands out: postal worker and lifelong Roma superfan Daniele De Santis. De Santis, a proud fascist and hooligan, first gained fame for running onto the pitch during the Rome derby to tell Francesco Totti the game needed to be stopped, after false rumours spread that the police had killed a child outside the stadium. And in 2014, before the Italian Cup final between Napoli and Fiorentina, De Santis once again hit the headlines. Despite Roma having missed out on the final, De Santis was unwilling to be left out and threw a flare at a bus, prompting a huge scrap with Partenopei fans. In the confusion, he was beaten and stabbed before pulling his gun and firing 3 shots, killing Napoli supporter Ciro Esposito. He is now serving 26 years in prison. So there we have it, but what do you guys at home think? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, why don't you click here for loads more great content and down there to subscribe. And as always guys, we'll catch you later.